Okay guys, here's a car that I've owned for a little while now and I really enjoy, and just wanted to do a review on it just for those people who really like these old Mercedes. This is a 1998 SL500 and it's an all original car. V8 of course, 5 liter. They're 315 horsepower and 347 foot-pounds of torque. So a lot of power. And actually the 1999 model had less horsepower. For some reason Mercedes dropped it and the torque dropped a little bit too. So this was kind of the last of the more powerful SLs until quite a bit later. And you got to remember, you know, back in '98, a Mustang GT was 225 horsepower and a Camaro Z28 was 305. So this actually had more horsepower than those cars did. And it needed it in part just because it was a much heavier car. This car weighs 4,167 pounds dry. So it's a very heavy car, and you can definitely feel it when you drive it. But it just feels very substantial. It doesn't necessarily feel heavy. It just feels very well made. And it's a nice riding car, partly because of its heft. But you know, it's a cruiser. I mean, Mercedes was not a sports car, even though it had great power. And I still think it's a beautiful car, even when compared to the new ones. Now this one was fairly heavily optioned and came in at $88,420. Part of which was the xenon headlights, which you can see there. That was kind of yesteryear's version of LED, I suppose. That was an optional headlight, and it's actually an explosion of gas inside the headlight that produces the light. Kind of weird. But anyway, came in at $88,420 window sticker, and compare that to the new one. The 19 with the V8 is $113,550. So it's actually not that much more when you consider how many years have passed since this car was made. And this one, I've got the windscreen on right now. But I think just a gorgeous car and really, really well made. And I have all the books and the original window sticker. So it was rated at 16 city and 23 highway, and 5-speed automatic, which back then was cutting edge technology. Even though now it's you know, very common, and in fact a lot of cars have more gears than that, but back then that was a pretty cool transmission. And the options that this car has are the multi-contour seat, which was, I think, a 16-way power seat. There's some of the adjustments there, and then the other adjustments for the seat are on the door. And so it had all kinds of airbags in it, and all kinds of different movement to it. So a very comfortable seat. This also had the panorama roof, which was a very expensive option. You can see there it was $3,600, and I'll show that to you in a second. And then the electronic stability program, which is just traction control. The xenon headlamps, which were almost $1,000, and heated front seats. Apparently that was not standard. So this car was almost king of the hill back then. The only thing more expensive than this was an SL500, which was the V12 car. And those they only made a handful of. So that was a very, very rare car. So not too many of those out there. But this was the next best thing. And this car is all original. So everything in it, including the radio, was factory from 1998. And that's kind of rare. A lot of these head units got replaced. In some of the cars I looked at, it was pretty common that they would have an aftermarket radio, which I don't think helps the car's value at all, but a lot of people just switched out the head unit for whatever reason. And this car came with a Bose stereo with 6 speakers, so 2 in the door, 1 there, 1 in the other door, 1 up here on the dash, another on the other side, and then 2 more in the back, small speakers in the back, and a subwoofer, which is back here. And there's the ports for it. So there's your subwoofer and amplifier. And the stereo sounds amazing. Really, really great sound quality. And the other side there opens as well, and that's just storage. And this is the old-fashioned type where you got to put the key in and turn it. And it's got the old-fashioned mile per gallon register, which is kind of funny. Not sure how accurate that is. Although I get about 20 miles per gallon out of the car, which, considering the horsepower and the weight, is pretty good. Again, everything is factory here. Everything works in this car. And here's the little cubby hole for your registration and insurance. And you can lock that, which also locks the center console, which is kind of nice. And this has a tape deck. Some people don't even know what that is anymore, and it actually works. ESP you can turn on and off. This also has a roll bar, which I'll put up in a second, and central locking and unlocking, and of course power windows. It has auto down windows, and then there's your heated seats. It has 2 settings, and your mirrors, and ashtray, which was never used. And I believe this is actually real wood too, which of course today would be almost impossible to find. There are very few cars that use that now. It's all plastic. Here's your headlights. They don't have automatic headlights. It does have driving lights. If you pull this out, that activates the driving lights. Parking brake release there. And it does have memory seats. There's 3 settings there for the memory seats. And then the cruise control is a separate stock here. And then a whole bunch of warning lights, typical back then. But you know, even like the lower part of the dash here is carpeted. Just, you know, really, really nice touches throughout this car. Automatic day-night mirror. And the windscreen, which is standard, you can fold down, and if you put up the roll bar, that comes up like that. And that's just to protect you in case of a rollover, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't happen in this car. I don't think anybody's driving it quite that aggressively. And the trunk is all lined with nice materials. And this one has the Mercedes-Benz CD changer. And that's, back then, that was a big deal. 6-disc CD changer. Now that was an accessory. They had to install that at the dealership. But still, not something you see these days. They're just non-existent. And then there's your spare, full-size spare. And that's the original. That's a Pirelli P6000. So, and it has an antenna that goes up and down when the radio's turned on and off. feel like I have to explain that because some people don't know what an antenna is. So I'll show you the panoramic roof. This had a separate hard top that is right here, and this particular one is all glass, which was that $3,600 option. And this plugs in so that you have a rear defroster, and it has a back window on it. And you can see the metal framing there, but that whole roof is glass, and it is really cool. It's really, really interesting when it's on the car. But the closest thing they have to this now is the Magic Sky roof, which, you know, now this is a hardtop convertible. So, you know, whereas my car has a soft top underneath that cover in the back, now they just have a hardtop. So mine requires two people to lift that hardtop that I just showed you. And it installs here, one pin there, one pin back here, and then up here on the roof, on top of the windshield. So definitely a two-person job, and it's heavy, but it actually looks really nice with the hardtop installed. So good-looking car either way, but obviously with the top down, it's a beautiful car. I think that's the best look for it. So anyway, not sure if anybody cares about an old Benz, but there she is. And I'm probably not going to have her too much longer. I think I'm going to put her up for sale and get a different car because I've had her for a little while now. But if you do have questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.